Okay, today we're going to talk about Unit 3, Lesson 3, which is partial fractions. Partial fractions is something that you'll use a lot in calculus when you talk about derivatives and integrals when you're working with fractions. So basically what we're going to do, the directions will say to decompose one fraction into partial fractions. Let me give you just kind of an example to look at here real quick. Let's look at 5x minus 8 over x times x minus 4. So what I want to do is I want to take this one fraction and I want to take it apart into two separate fractions, or in some cases we'll have three separate fractions, but I want to take one fraction and decompose or take it apart into its pieces. Okay, what I should end up with, in this case, two fractions that will add or subtract to give me back this one fraction right here. So if you ever want to check your answer at the end, you can always go back and add these two things together. It should give you this back right here. Okay, so what I'm going to do to get started is I'm going to take my factors that are on the bottom and I'm going to put one underneath one fraction and one as the denominator of the other fraction. So that's going to give me two separate fractions to work with. Okay, sometimes you'll have to factor first. I'll show you an example of that in just a minute. But in this case, I was already given two factors. I can make those the denominators of my fraction. Okay, I'm going to assume addition until I come out with a negative. If I have a negative, then I'll subtract. But I'm going to assume addition to get me started. Okay, I'm going to give a variable to the top. I'm going to call one of them A and one of them B, and it does not matter which order those are in. Okay, in the next step, I want to multiply through by my common denominator, which will be what you have on the bottom of this one because you used it to make these two fractions over here. Okay, so I'm going to multiply through on this one times x minus 4. And then on this one, x times x minus 4. And then on this one, x times x minus 4. Okay, notice that I went ahead and wrote it 3 times. And the reason is because I need to multiply every single fraction by this common denominator. So on this one, I'm going to let the x cancel out, and I'm going to let the x minus 4 cancel out. And so that's going to leave me with 5x minus 8. Okay, on my a fraction, I'm going to let just x cancel out, so this one. And that's going to leave me with x minus 4 times a. And then on this one, I'm going to let the x minus 4's cancel out, and that's going to leave me with x times b. Okay, so far I've set up into two fractions, and then I multiplied through each fraction by the common denominator. Okay, now I'm going to start picking some x values. So I'm going to start making some assumptions. And I'm going to choose x values that will make one of these be 0. So I'm going to start with this one right here. It doesn't matter which one you start with, but I'm going to start with this one. And I'm going to say if I plug in 4 right here, it will make a be 0. All right, so I'm going to say if x equals 4. So if x equals 4, I'm going to have 5 times 4 minus 8. And I'm going to have 4 minus 4a plus 4b. So everywhere that I had an x, I replaced it with a 4. Okay, so on this side, that's going to give me 20. Minus 8 is going to give me 12. My 4 minus 4 gives me 0, which is going to make a go away. And then over here, I'm going to be left with 4b. So what I found out is that b is equal to 3. Okay, so there's my answer for b. I'm going to go back and use that in just a minute. All right, now let's go back up here to this one. This one's really important right here. I've found b, so I've canceled out a. Let's choose something that will cancel out b, and so I'm going to use 0 because 0 times b would just be 0. All right, so next I'm going to say if x is equal to 0. So that's going to be 5 times 0 minus 8 equals 0 minus 4a plus 0 times b. Okay, so again, everywhere that I had an x, I replaced it with a 0. Okay, so 0 times b is just going to be 0. That's going to make that one go away. This is going to be 0 right here, so this kind of goes away right here, but I am still left with a minus 8 on that side, so watch out for that. So negative 8. And then on this side, I've got negative 4a which tells me that a is equal to 2. Okay, and I'm circling those because they are a part of my answer, but they are not my answer. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up here to where I have a and b, and I'm going to plug in, and I'm going to say that this thing is equal to 2 over x plus, and then b was 3, so 3 over x minus 4. And those are my two fractions that if I added them together would give me this fraction back. Okay, again, you could go through and you could check your answer if you want to. So let me go down here and check my answer. I've got 2 over x plus 3 over x minus 4. I'm going to use SMILE to check my answer. All right, so SMILE tells me to do 2 times x minus 4. That's going to give me 2x minus 8 plus, and then I've got 3 times x. And then on the bottom, I'm going to SMILE, and that gives me x times x minus 4. So that does give me 5x minus 8 over x times x minus 4. So I get my original fraction back, and that's the goal. That's the point. Okay, let's try another one. I'll let you get started on this one, and then I'm going to see if you can try the rest of it on your own. So let's see here. Let's take a look at number 2. So number 2, I'm going to do x plus 3 over x squared minus 8x plus 15. Okay, so I'm going to decompose that into, this one's also going to be 2 partial fractions. I'll show you a 3 here in just a minute. Okay, so before I can get started, I need factors here. So let me rewrite my x plus 3. And I'm going to factor that into x and x. And my factors of 15 that will add to give me negative 8 are going to be negative 5 and negative 3. And it does not matter which order you do those in. All right, so I'm going to take my x minus 5 and put it under one fraction. And I'm going to take my x minus 3 and put it underneath another fraction. And I'm going to put a and b on top. So I'm just choosing a and b to be my variables up there on the top. And again, these also can go in either order. All right, let's multiply through by our common denominator. X minus 5 times x minus 3. Right, and so on the first one, my x minus 5 cancels out and my x minus 3 cancels out, so that leaves me just with x plus 3. With a, my x minus 5s cancel out, so that leaves me with x minus 3 times a plus, and on b, my x minus 3s cancel out, and that leaves me with x minus 5 times b. Okay, I'm going to put a star next to that one. That's the one that I'm going to keep plugging things into. And I'm going to start with what will make either one of these be 0. It does not matter which order you go in. I'm going to start with this one. All right, so I'm going to say if x is equal to 3, because I know that 3 minus 3 is going to give me 0. All right, so over here I'm going to have 3 plus 3 equals 3 minus 3 times a plus 3 minus 5 times b. So everywhere that I had an x, I replaced it with a 3. This is going to give me 6. This is going to give me 0, so a is going to go away. 3 minus 5 gives me negative 2b, so b is equal to negative 3. And I'm going to circle it because I'm going to go back and need that in just a minute. All right, now I'm going to pick something that will make b go away. So I know if I plug in 5 minus 5 will give me 0. So next I'm going to say if x is equal to 5. All right, I'm going to plug back in where my star is. So I'm going to go 5 plus 3 equals 5 minus 3 times a plus 5 minus 5 times b. All right, 5 minus 5 gives me 0, so that's going to go away. And I'm going to have 8 here, and I've got 2a there. This one, 5 minus 5 gave me 0. So I know that a is equal to 4. All right, let's go back up to the very top, and I'm going to say then that x plus 3 over, you can write this in factored form, or you can write it all together if you want to, your choice on that. But we need something to attach it to. And I'm going to put in my 4 for a, and I'm going to put in my negative 3 for b, so I'm going to write it as minus 3 over x minus 3. Okay. If you have a plus and negative, that's okay too, but the minus is just a little bit more correct. Okay, again, you can go and use Smile to check your answer if you would like. Okay, on the last one, I'm going to show you one that has a quadratic in the bottom, or a squared term, I should say. It has a squared term on the bottom. All right, on the top, I'm going to have negative x squared plus 3. On the bottom, I'm going to have x plus 1 times x plus 2 squared. Okay, so that squared throws a little bit of a kink into my system because I'm using a least common denominator. I don't know if this thing started off with an x plus 2 and an x plus 2 squared, or just that x plus 2 squared. So I have to kind of think about it as if it did happen. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to keep my x plus 1 as one of my factors, or denominators. Then I need to build up to this. So I'm going to have one denominator that's x plus 2, and I'm going to have one denominator that's x plus 2 squared. Okay, if I had a cube, which we won't do a cube, but if I had a cube, I would do x plus 2 squared, and then x plus 2 cubed. So you have to kind of build up to those. Okay, I'm going to now have an a, b, and a c that I need to work with. Okay, my common denominator is just going to be this thing that was on the bottom of my first one, so x plus 1 times x plus 2 squared. And again, you'll notice that I write it for every single one because I don't want it to look like anything's canceling out until it actually does. So go ahead and write that next to every single fraction so that you can mark things out as they cancel. Okay, so let's cancel my x plus 1s and my x plus 2 squareds on that first one. Leaves me just with negative x squared plus 3. Okay, on this one, x plus 1 cancels out. That leaves me with a times x plus 2 squared. Or actually, let me write that the other way. I wrote it the other way on the first one, so let me write it the other way. Let's do x plus 2 squared times a. Okay, with b, my x plus 2, just one of them is going to cancel out. So all it does is take off my exponent. So I'm still going to have x plus 1, and I'm going to have 1 of my x plus 2's times b. Then with c, the whole thing cancels out, including the square, so I just have the x plus 1 left with c. Okay, so I'm going to choose negative 2 to start with to make a go away. So I'm going to go down here and say if x is equal to negative 2. All right, so this is going to be kind of funny right here. Let's watch our order of operations on this one. Let's use some parentheses. Going to give me negative 2 plus 2 squared with a. It's going to give me negative 2 plus 1 times negative 2 plus 2 for b. And then it's going to give me negative 2 plus 1 for c. Okay, so everywhere that I had an x, I replaced it with a negative 2. Okay, I said to watch your order of operations here, so just be very careful. So I've got negative 2 squared, which gives me 4, but then I still have a negative in front. So this is really negative 4 plus 3. Okay, negative 2 plus 2 gives me 0, so a is going to go away. But then watch this one, because negative 2 plus 2 also gives me 0. 0 times negative 1 is still 0, times b is still 0. So that's going to take out a and b and leave me just with this negative 1c. So I've got negative 1 is equal to negative 1c, so c is equal to 1. Okay, circle it because we're going to come back and use it. Okay, now let's pick something that'll make c go away. I'm going to skip over b for just a minute. I'll tell you why. So I'm going to pick something that will make c go away. So I'm going to pick negative 1. All right, so I'm going to do if x is equal to negative 1. All right, I'm plugging in back here. I forgot to start my original equation there. All right, so I'm plugging in back in right here. So that's going to be negative 1 squared plus 3 equals negative 1 plus 2 squared for a, and negative 1 plus 1 times negative 1 plus 2 for b, plus negative 1 plus 1 for c. Okay, so I plugged all of that back in right there. Everywhere that I had an x, I replaced it with negative 1. Okay, again, watch your order of operations right here. Negative 1, when I square it, is 1, but I still have a negative out in front there, so be careful with that. All right, negative 1 plus 2 is going to give me 1 squared. Still gives me 1, so I've got 1a. And then here's a 0 right here, so that's going to make b go away. And here's a 0, which makes c go away. All right, so this is going to give me that 2 is equal to a. That one worked out kind of nice and neat. Okay, the problem now is that I don't have anything else that I could plug into this that will make one of my variables be 0. I've already used negative 1, and I've already used negative 2. Okay, so I need something that will make a and c go away so that I can find b. So what I'm going to do in my last step here is I'm going to just pick any number for x. It doesn't matter, just make sure it's not negative 2 and negative 1 that you've already used. I'm going to pick 0 just because I think 0 is easy. And then I'm also going to use that I know a is 2 and c is 1. Okay, so from here and here, I already know a is 2 and c is 1. All right, so I'm going to plug in back up here where my star is. I'm going to plug in for x and a and c. All right, so I've got negative 0 squared plus 3 is equal to, some dots on that, I've got x is 0 plus 2 squared times a, which is 2, plus, I'm going to do 0 plus 1 times 0 plus 2 times b, that's what I'm looking for. And then finally I'm going to do 0 plus 1 times c, which is 1. Okay, so now the only variable I have left is b. All right, so 0 squared is just 0. That's just going to leave me with 3 over here. This is going to be 2 squared is 4 times 2 gives me 8. This is going to be 1 times 2 times b, so that's going to give me 2b. And this is going to give me 1 times 1, which gives me 1. All right, now some algebra. So that's going to give me 2b plus 9. I'm going to subtract over my 9. That gives me negative 6 equals 2b. And b is going to be negative 3. And I'll tell you that all the ones that we're going to work out, your a, your b, and your c will come out to be nice, neat integers. If you ever get a fraction or a decimal, something may be going wrong. All right, let's give it something to attach to. So I'm going to go back and rewrite down my original problem there. X plus 1 times x plus 2 squared. And I'm going to say that that's equal to 2 over x plus 1. So I plugged my a back in. And then I've got b is negative, so I'm going to say minus 3 over x plus 2. And then c is positive, so that's going to be 1 over x plus 2 squared. Okay, so it's a good thing that we went back and included this, because if we didn't include it, we'd be missing out on this part of our fraction right here. These are a little bit harder to add together to check your answer. As long as you're coming out with integers, you're probably coming out with the right answers on these. You can check them, just be sure that you use your least common denominator. Okay, so try some of those on worksheet 3 and bring questions with you to class.